Welcome back to episode 3 and the dive with Zach Neff and Luca Delatry. Luca, welcome. Um, Obviously, we just had a little shindig before we started this, but
Always.
how are you? First off, let's slow down.
Very good. Very good. Had a beautiful night last night. I was in the city with my two best friends. Went to a comedy club yesterday. Hung out. Um, it was a great night. So, how about yourself?
I'm lovely. I'm out of town and for a buddy's wedding, and the past day has been filled with lovely conversations, and
There
I
we
couldn't
go.
be more excited to do
Love
what
that.
I'm doing right now. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. So I just wanted to reflect a little bit because this is a start for me. And what I was thinking about when we ended our last one was it was funny how I learned more about you. Um, Not in a sense of, well, in the sense of like more of small talk. And I was reflecting on that. I was like, man, did we not dive into this whenever we were like getting to know each other? Like, why did we stop? Why did we stop with the per se small talk of like, where are you from? What did you do? What was your past like?
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny because like I related it to like a lot of other instances where we kind of bypassed it and we got into like real stuff right away and we didn't like not that we didn't care where each other was from, but like in professional baseball, like in my experience, you meet so many people and you meet like this and that and like what started my like thought process was I was asked the other day is what makes somebody memorable or like how do you make yourself memorable. And I think it's exactly that. And the way I wanted to answer when I walked away, the way I wanted to answer was like, well, I don't know you, so like obviously it's like first impressions matter, but like I think the people that know me or get connected with me are like, man, like I know him and he's memorable and like the
Mhm.
experiences or the conversations we had, it might not be like jumping off the page, but like it's like, man, I feel like we're connected in some way. So I just thought it was interesting. I would like to hear your perspective on like maybe skipping the small talk or what your thoughts were on like if you thought that you learned something about me that you never knew either because I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah. No. I did leave that conversation. It was like I learned so much about high school you and everything leading up. Like in terms of your mindset with professional baseball prior to that, not even knowing you'd be even playing. Like we meet so many people and for the most part everyone's goal is to play professional baseball, like that's your main goal, like ultimately, and everyone is that's their main focus, and a lot of guys that make it there is because that's why they're laser focused on that singular goal, and then obviously get there, and then the rest is history, and whatever they make of it they make of it. But it was interesting to see that on your end it really wasn't that way. It was just more so um, just enjoying whatever you're doing in the moment, and then you just kind of found yourself. It's like, oh wow, like I just got drafted, and like that's just a very unique story that like isn't common from in my experience. Like everyone usually is hell bent on the draft, hell bent on professional baseball, and hell bent on going this, and it wasn't like that for you. So it was interesting to see like your mindset when you were a kid. Like not like a kid, but you know younger than you are now, like in your 20s or early 20s, high teens. Like it was cool to see your mindset then because I definitely was not there mentally then. I was in a much worse place. So yeah, I did learn a lot about you. But yeah, yeah.
Well, like I don't like it. Just is interesting because like did we skip the small talk? Like did
Yeah,
because
sorry. I
sorry,
blanked.
yeah.
Um, yeah, no,
So,
when it is interesting because when we did start talking and we were sitting there, like you did just dive right into just like real deep conversation. I forget the question you asked me, but I was just like, whoa, okay. And we just started going. And, you know, usually there are steps to like relationship and like, growing each other's trust and stuff. And we've had, we've had conversations, plenty of them about like why, why did it just like click from the beginning? Like, why are we so comfortable? Like you kind of mentioned, like, why were we comfortable just opening up to each other about things? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, it didn't really make sense because a lot of times it's not the case in normal conversations, normal relationships. It doesn't start that way. That kind of blind faith, that blind trust in the other person to like just open up and not worry about being judged, not worrying about how they perceive you. Like, usually that's a mind, that's a thing that you're thinking of at least when you meet somebody, and that really wasn't the case. So I really don't have an answer about that because it doesn't make much sense. Um, but it is funny that we did skip on just all the basic stuff. Like I knew you're from Illinois, I knew you grew up on a farm, but like I didn't know much of anything else. And it was very cool to kind of go through that last week and um, just catch up. I guess it's the best way to put it. It's like catch up, and maybe it'll create great conversations going forward. I'm not sure, but I mean, did you know? I feel like maybe I've done a better. I don't know if I did a better job than you, but like, did you know a little bit more about my past than I did yours? Like, how much did you learn about me per se?
I mean, I knew the UNC stuff. I knew like or like the Jersey stuff, but like when you were telling your story, there was a lot that I was listening to that I hadn't known. And
Yeah.
like a quick little like interlude, a quick little story. I was just at a coffee shop, and I'm out here in Richmond, Virginia. I got up from my hotel, and I remember I went to the like pre-party last night and with for Winder's wedding. I don't know if I should say that, but it's okay. And I met this guy that I met last night, and it was the first time. And he plays pro ball and whatnot, and so I just sat down in an hour and had, in my opinion, another deep conversation. Now, like it was interesting to me. It's like, and I think that's what I'm learning from this podcast is that's who I am and that's who I want to be. Like I think that's what makes me memorable is I can sit down and I can get lost in an hour or 2 hours, 3 hours conversation. And like that's kind of the feedback I've been getting from my buddies when I've been sharing this podcast with them and like asking their feedback on how I can make it better or how we can make it better. So I thought it was really fun. And like I sit down and I left that conversation. I couldn't wait to get on the screen today and talk to you about it because I was like, I skipped the small talk with that guy too. Like, yeah, like we got the general basics out of the way, and then we're diving into like coaching, we're diving into strategy, we're diving into what makes a good culture in a locker room. And
Yeah.
so I don't know, like, did we? I guess this is a good segue into what we're going to next. Like, did we jump right into trauma, or like, I guess, do we jump right into experiences that had effects on us? I guess, and that's kind of where I want, like, we can take off from there into this segment about trauma or trauma journaling or like the growth through experience is another way to put it. So I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit.
So you want to get into trauma journaling? Is that what I'm getting at? Like, or just
Yeah, yeah. Like, let's no, let's not.
I'm curious, honestly, I'm curious about the conversation you had yesterday. I want to know what uh what got your wheels turning.
A lot of
Because
things. So
because
go
what I mean,
ahead.
I'm curious. I know how our conversations usually go, especially like towards the beginning of how they were. Like, I'm curious, like what how it went. Like these things that got you going. Because I could tell you're enthusiastic just from when we started the call, before we even
Yeah.
started recording.
I don't. I'm filled with energy right now. Well, one, I got like positive feedback, which is always great, and like everybody loves to be validated. But like people are like, I'm enjoying your podcast, and Winder gave me great feedback, and there's a reason that I'm at his wedding, and I love that guy with my full soul. But he was like, he goes, the one thing I think that you need to talk about is like the connection. He goes, you're a deep feeler. You feel everything, and that's like my basis for baseball. That's my basis for life. Is like when I do something, I jump full board into it, and like I just whether it's going good or going bad, like I'm feeling the whole experience, and I think that's it. Like I love. I don't want to say I love to feel, but I feel deeply on a lot of levels, and I think that like creates my vulnerability, and it's probably why I've been hurt a lot in the past, or even experienced a lot of joy in the past as well. And so he also made the comment that uh, I'm good at like adapting or changing my like having a rudder and aiming upwards. And I was like, that's literally like the definition of my our podcast. Sorry. And I was like, and he's like, dude, I want you to dive into it. I want you to talk about it. And it, like from different aspects, like from high school, I had my rudder changed into college, like my aim changed into college, and then from college to or from even transferring from Austin P to Mississippi State, like the change there mentally, the aim there was differently, and then into pro ball, and then post TJ, and so like how like taking people through those emotions of the ups and the downs, and just going from there. And I was like, man, like that's great feedback, and I would love to share. So like I would love to take like that into what we're doing right now.
Let's do it.
you know?
Let's
So,
do it. I'm curious. So when you say you're a deep feeler, do you find from the from past situations that when things go south, because obviously all experiences have, there's some experiences that, went south, that went bad. If you allow yourself to feel obviously everything, do you find that you have a harder time jumping back in to, let's say, let's just break it down to a relationship. I'm sure you've dealt with heartbreak, and we've talked about that. Like, do you find that being a deep feeler, for example, and really, really investing yourself, no matter the situation, no matter like, no matter how long into the relationship you are, do you find that when things go south, when, let's say you get hurt, because that's common to everybody, do you have a harder time jumping back in, get like hopping back on the saddle? Let's use that word. Like, do you find that,
um,
that's a challenge for you?
I, I'll say this, like whenever I am in a relationship or whenever I'm chasing after something that I highly desire or I'm going after, I'm all in, 100%. Like, and it's not a long process. Like, if not, I don't want to say not a long process, but like immature me, younger me, is jumping on board, and I'm all aboard. Like, and I might miss things that maybe don't align with my values. So like in my past, yes, like I would become interested and go on dates and have these and connect with these and have a relationship with a couple people, or not a couple people, but over my past I've had a few relationships, and those relationships, like I thought I was getting married and spending the rest of my life with those people. So like when those things hurt, like ended or stopped being producing good fruit, then yeah, like I would go on these deep depressive slides kind of. And like when I was younger, I was probably bad at hiding them. And as I got older, I got a little better. I don't even know if I didn't even get better at hiding them. I didn't care. I just wore it on my sleeve. And it probably hurt me a lot more, especially via social media. Like I would get angry or I'd get upset and I would spill my emotions via social media. And I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But like it's just kind of what I did in the past. And it's like whenever I got into that TJ era of rehab, that's one thing that it taught me is I went back and I reflected a lot on like what got me into those positions. And so like I still had a lot of learning to do and I still do have a lot of learning to do, but like it did take me a long time to get over a lot of things. And I wouldn't the we we did that segment, I don't know, about a year or two ago with the trauma journaling, like when that way that Huberman taught it, and
Hmm.
that helped me a lot in the way I processed my trauma. And
Yeah, exactly.
you know what I'm saying? So like I would write the four times that you write about it. The first time there was no gratitude. It was just spilling facts and emotions. And then by the time I got to the end of like the fourth day, it was like my scene shifted and I was like it was all gratitude. And I was thankful for the moments that I got to spend with those people, even when they ended poorly. And I was like I learned so much through those experiences about me and about like the way the world works that it was interesting. Like I left those and I immediately was uplifted because like I took away the blaming myself. I took away the, you know, woe was me, like I can't believe this happened, like we should still be together. Like I kind of just let it all go. And I mean there are definitely some things I hold on to because I felt them at a deep level, and like I can still tell you stories today about those instances and like those moments that changed me. But even on the baseball field, I had those moments too. So it's like even the ups and the downs of baseball like provided those. And like it's not just about life, it's not just about baseball, but like those two things I know a lot about through my experience.
Yeah. I'm curious. It's like I'm thinking while you're talking about this, like I rewind probably like 2, 3 minutes, and you're talking about just it's like you and the relationship, and like let's say your past self and whatever. Um, the idea, like when you're in a relationship, when you first start dating someone, right, and you're first together with them, you don't really know them for who they are. You have basically, the person you've met so far. So whether it be a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, like it's still very elementary in terms of how deep you know somebody. So basically, what you do subconsciously is you fill in the blanks. with your perception of who you wish they were. And so that like initial love of what you feel somebody like that infatuation, you're hell bent, right? It's almost you're in love with perception rather than reality. And there's of course some parts of it that are real because you obviously met the person. But if you know if you're gonna dive like if you dive into something head first and you're you feel the whole package and you're and whatever it is, say you feel love, say you feel gratitude, say you feel infatuation, like whatever it is you're feeling, if you're overly into it, right? Going from your past relationships, I know you're not in a relationship right now, but let's just say things you've learned, of course, that if you were one, I'm sure you'd be in a much different situation to be a person for the person you're with. The way you handle things in the past, let's say early stages of the relationship where you just kind of jumped into it, blindly, right? How would you say you've learned from the idea that, to give them your all, of course, because you want to try to give them your best self, but with to a certain extent, it's like I can't yet because like in terms of just emotional maturity in and of itself, like there's times there to know when to say things, right? Like in terms of how you're feeling, and more so for yourself rather than them. Not because you're scared that how they're going to feel. That's irrelevant. It's more so to solidify the way you feel is true. Do you love the person or do you love the perception of who they are? Or let's say that 50%, 75% that you do know, but there's still 25% you don't know. And of course, you could always argue there's going to be parts that you don't know about them. You're going to continue learning on through the relationship, but it can't be 25% of the person. It can't be 50%. It can't be 25% that you know. There's that Cinderella phase to where you're basically filling in the blanks of what you wish they were, who you have this mindset of who they are, and then as you slowly start growing, it's like, oh, or you start seeing each other longer and longer. It's like you learn different aspects of them. And then when at the beginning, when you gave them your all, and you realize they're kind of not the person you thought they were. Now it's like, well, what do you do now? It's like you already told them all this stuff. You already gave them all this part of you. It's like, are you going to pull back? Because what if you don't feel the same? So, what my question is, going forward, let's say, or maybe speaking of past experiences, is there anything you would do differently in terms of giving them your all, even though you can give your all, like within the sense of giving them your full presence, giving them your best self? There's a different line of romantically, like giving them your all in terms of how you're truly how you're feeling, saying, telling them everything how you feel. There's a time and place, like I said. Going forward, how do you feel like you're in a better chance right now, or in a better position now to control, let's say, those initial feelings and not overdo it?
Okay, yeah, I'm with you. So I would say it goes back to my definition of personal growth, which in my definition, it's stepping away from the emotion. So you're going on those first couple of dates, you're getting to know them, and it's euphoric, and you're in that honeymoon phase, and all is good and well, and there's no problems, and you're both attached or whatever per se. And so it's when you finally get that time alone, or even if you're together, it's kind of like stepping away from the emotion of even the love or the infatuation or the positive emotion, I guess per se, and you step away you step away from it and you evaluate it. You know, you try to take the
Hmm.
emotion out of it. How are they acting when we're on the dates? Is that something that like I value? Is what they're saying to me something that I value? Are they telling me the truth? Like, do I feel like I'm being led on, or do I like what is really happening outside of like the physical attraction or that honeymoon phase? What is really happening? And then using the past experiences to you know go make decisions from there. Like, do we need to slow down? Like, can we keep going at the pace we're going? Like, for me, like a lot of the things, like the adjustment I would make going forward is to attempt to just continue to slow down. And like, I don't have an endless amount of time, but like the effect of slowing down has made everything else in my life like come to
Hmm.
fruition. So why would I not apply that to my next future relationship? And like, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to while I'm in that emotion to step away from it and be like, look, like I'm here with you. No, 100%. But like I need to slow down and evaluate in order to continue to move forward at the pace that I want to move.
100%.
So like I would say that would be my adjustment going forward. And obviously, like I said, it's still going to be hard. Like it's not going to be like easy. And I think all relationships are going to be hard regardless. Like nobody's going to agree on everything. Nobody's going to disagree on everything. So like there's always that growth
Yeah.
within the relationship. And like that's where I was kind of turn it over to you is like you're getting into that stage. Like I don't want to say you're out of the honeymoon phase, but you're moving into a more realistic like partnership with somebody. So like how are you
Hmm.
handling that based on your experiences of your past?
It was a learning curve for sure. Um, I I had some bad experiences in relationships where, you know, got my heart broken twice and led to, led to a kind of a downfall. I let it really affect me. So, um, I wasn't in a relationship for 3 years, 3.5 years, 3 years and change. Um, I just, I wanted nothing to do with it. I had things focused on myself. And then I met Tally and, I really didn't have much of an option. I was like, all right, I need to give this a shot. I felt like I was doing everything the right way, and the way things transpired is just like this is a sign. Like this isn't something that I can just pass up. Like there's a reason why we cross paths, and we can get into that whole crossing paths story, later on. It's not really relevant right now, but there's a very minute chance that we actually met. It was a very slim chance, and I went through basically what I was just kind of saying, kind of asking you is just I had this perception of who I thought she was, and I thought I was in love with her after literally a month, and I'm proud of myself and grateful for myself that I just journaled and I just wrote letters, but I didn't give them to her. I just needed to put it to pen to paper and just write out what was going on and like what I was feeling, and basically like what I came to terms with was facts like you can feel this now, that's fine. You can't get mad at yourself for what you feel. The only you can get mad at yourself is if you act on it too soon without actually letting it solidify. So basically, I just wrote it down and just wrote some letters and whatever. And basically, I told myself, I was like, if you still feel this way in a month, then at least it's worth a conversation with yourself. Other than that, don't even fancy it. Don't sit here and think that she's the love of your life and you're gonna marry and you're gonna spend the rest of your life together. It's like you don't know shit. You just know what you feel in this moment. Like you can't trust your emotions. You can't trust what your mind tells you. It's like you can only trust on like what's real. And something persists over time, then you know at least it's possibly real. And then you look into it deeper and you could see there's what's the causes of it. But I did a good job of that, and I'm grateful for that. And I gave us an opportunity to really grow um, organically and not have it be something that we were kind of like I kind of said stuff too soon and I kind of made things too serious too soon and kind of everything just happened in a way where it was just very organic and I don't like the word comfortable but like it was and it made the idea of what the future held a lot more. It made it a lot more
Viable.
acceptable.
It's viable.
I wasn't scared. Yeah, I wasn't scared. And things just kind of happened one by one. And I'm a big believer in the concept that the relationship in and of itself is just made up of a bunch of you know small encounters. And if you treat it, and of course it just boils down to just treating each moment, enjoying each moment and making the most of each moment because the relationship is just that. It's a series of micro relationships within the entire relationship, and however long the entire relationship is how many series of micro relationships you have in that. So every time you see each other, let's say, if you're constantly doing things that make you both want to repeat that action or that relationship, like in that moment, whatever you guys do, we call it a date, call it watching a movie, laughing together, whatever it is. Like if you guys constantly want to repeat what you guys are doing, well, that's the relationship. And if you really treat it that way, it takes away from the anxiety of where things could go. And that was a problem of mine. It's like I'd meet somebody who's just like, well, what if it doesn't go wrong? How do what if I get hurt? What if I have to hurt her? Like, and it was just obviously a negative thought process. And when I really boiled it down to the fact that just like I'm going to give her my best self in each moment, and see where it goes, and not focus on what's later on, because if you have three, four, five, six like encounters that you guys don't want to repeat, well, that's not like that. You keep repeating that, it's not going to work out. The relationship's just going to fizzle out, and it's that simple. So to sit there and think about the future is irrelevant, because you'll know in the moment if it's going forward. And if it's something you don't want to repeat, then either you guys address it and you guys speak about it. You communicate on as to why you don't want it to repeat, and you're better going forward. And if you guys can't figure that out and it continues on, then well, that shows that maybe this isn't the situation for you, and that relationship was meant for let's say a 2 month thing, 3 month thing, a year thing. So I'm fully bought into that idea. It's just like I'm trying to create the best environment for us to just enjoy each other in each moment, each time we see each other, and every encounter we have. And as long as we both can do that, um, the relationship's infinite. Because if you're constantly enjoying each moment together, why would you worry about it ending? That's just counterintuitive. At that point, you're doing something that's just going to hurt yourself, and why would you do that? So, that boils down to a lot of like all the conversation we've had about just being present and being your best self and enjoying the moment, and trusting that everything you're doing now will take care of later. And like it's just that. So, um, it's been a journey, and she's taught me more things I can even say off the top of my head, and I'm very grateful for that. And I wouldn't be the person I am right this moment if I hadn't had her for the past year. That's for
So,
sure.
so you say like within the month you thought you were in love, right? And then you're journaling about them.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
so instead of reacting and sharing those with her, what was the response internally that led you to your next moment? Like, so like I guess what I'm trying to understand is, is that you have these feelings of like very high like infatuation, love, and
Hmm.
then you're sitting there and you're journaling and you're feeling them for yourself, and you're like, you look at them and you're like, okay, what is my next step forward? And what did that next step forward look like? And did it just simply evolve into I want to enjoy my next moment with her? Was that the next step forward?
So basically, it was, I don't want to fuck this up. That's the only way I could look at it, really. Like I saw me explaining how I felt at the beginning, like how like that early. I saw that only being a push away, like that her giving her a reason to back off, and rightfully
When
so.
you wrote about it, or when you were in the moment?
No, if I actually told her, if I told her, like if I had
Were you
wrote about it and given her those letters, for example.
were you
Is that what you're
picturing
asking me?
yourself? Yeah, were you picturing yourself telling her that?
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, that's essentially, the conversation's not with myself. I'm journaling. The conversation is really about really with her. It's just I'm not getting her response, and that in and of itself can be a powerful tool as well. Journaling wise, it doesn't have to always be a conversation with yourself. But you can write whatever you're writing about as if you were saying it, and you know see how it goes. And
So what did you evaluate?
but that's the beauty. You can have a million relationship. You can have a million conversations with somebody, and never have their response. And maybe in those journals, you're learning things like, oh, maybe I don't like this. No, this doesn't sound right, or blah blah blah. Like you can just go down the list of what could go, what the benefits are from that. But basically, from the beginning, like how the way I was feeling, I knew, I knew that I couldn't be in love that fast. I just knew, like how I was feeling was, I had just this. I just knew, I was like, you need to let this sit. You need to let this just sit, and just continue doing what you're doing up to this moment with her. And because that's at least is creating this feeling in you. So like my only focus was just enjoy each moment with her. Give her your best. Give her no reason to give her no reason to want to switch things up, and not do this anymore, not want to see you anymore. Like earn her in each every moment. Like earn her, earn her presence, earn her. At the time we didn't say we loved each other, but like earn her love, earn earn the prospect of her loving you. Like it's like you have to earn it every day, and then when you guys actually do know you love each other, it's still earned. You know what, you guys fall in love and that's it, the work's done. It's like, no, if anything, it's harder to maintain it than it is to actually get it. Um, because, this is kind of, for me, this is even a hard concept for me to even wrap my head around, but I do find a lot of like truth in it. It's like what I learned from my experience was that I had these emotions that shot up. Like I just felt something, and it was like more than honestly I ever felt in my life. But then when I started really like seeing her, like getting to spend more time with her, not like I didn't want to be with her, not like I didn't love her or whatever, like, or let's say I think I love her, but I definitely felt less. Like at the beginning, it was like it shot up, and then it like came back down, never to baseline. I was still much like I was still pretty high up above baseline, but my feelings did dip. Learning things about her, seeing situations like, oh, the idea of my perception of who I thought she was in those situations versus the reality of it. It's not like she was bad. It's just not the perfect Cinderella person that I expected it to be, and that's not fair on my end because it's like I'm holding her to a standard that's not reachable, you know, and that I feel like a lot of people do that, and a lot of people do that in the wrong way where they fall in love with that and then they speak on behalf of those emotions they feel, and then when they actually see the reality of the situation, then they get pushed back on their heels like, whoa, who the hell was that? Well, that's the person you think you love. You just didn't give yourself enough chance to actually figure them out before you said the words.
So what do
And
you
so,
do? What do you do in those moments when that happens? When your perception and your reality are different?
well, exactly. That's why I think it's important to have enough baseline information on the person. Let's say I don't want to make this a scientific experiment, but like, to a certain extent, it's like you want to have enough information on this person to where the feelings you feel are real, and you're going to always learn things about them. And so basically what I've learned throughout the relationship, we've been with each other for just over a year now. Over time, like, you feel something and then you learn something, you dip a little bit. It's not like you dip and you don't love them anymore, right? It's like you learn that part of them. Okay, well, if anything, that dip is more important than anything else because now that, let's say it's a circle, right? That circle full of love. Well, that dip maybe means that there's a little crack, but that doesn't mean that you're not capable of loving that person too. But when you come to terms like, all right, okay, this is who they are. You learn, whatever, you just kind of, you just take it all in, and then you fall in love with that person, that whole package that you just learned about, right? And then now you have more love to give, and then you keep going, and well, at a certain point you love them for everything. But I honestly, what I've learned, and I don't know if this is wrong, but love is more like learning to love the person for who they are rather than like just being in love with a person. It's like you have to learn to love the version that you're constantly learning, and like it's silly to think you're going to love every single thing about the person, but it's knowing the person for like their intentions and their purity and who they are internally that makes you love the negative, like the flaws. And it's like if you love what they're about and what they're striving for and all that, mentally who they are and like the way they treat themselves and all these things that are important, of course, it makes falling in love with these little negative aspects to them way easier because it's like you know them to like their core base, and then there's little things outside of it. But um, and I've had all these conversations with her, and it's like the love you feel it's never just straight up. It's you go up and you kind of dips a little bit, and then you learn to love that version of them, and it just shoots up even more. But like so, in terms of total displacement, the love you feel at the end versus where you start is immensely like more. But to reach that higher level, it's obviously there's dips, and that's just the reality of life, of course. But um, one thing I can say I've learned the most is just like letting things sit, not speaking on just emotion, and letting it actually sit within you, and addressing it, and seeing within how you feel and like what's going on before you actually even say anything. Not speaking on emotion is probably one of the biggest lessons I could have learned, and it's going to help me everywhere, of course. But just the simple fact of speaking on emotion can, if you just get rid of that by itself, and you can actually be able to distinguish emotion versus like reality, or facts. I don't know I don't know what the opposite of like, emotion is, let's say. But like if you can just do that and just not act on your emotion, you're gonna find yourself in a lot, many just better situations. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, many better, but like you're gonna find yourself in just better situations in general if you just alleviate just acting on emotion. So
I journaled about that a lot, especially um, previously, and the simplification I came to it was instead of reacting, try to get to a response. And
yeah,
I thought
exactly.
like I defined a reaction as with emotion, and I defined response without emotion. And so I think like simply what you're saying is like try to move into a position where you're responding instead of reacting, because
Hmm.
even though it is a euphoric emotion, the reaction might not be the response that you want.
Yeah,
And
and
I know
a week
we've
from now you may not feel the same way.
yeah, and I we've talked about that a
That's the
lot.
thing.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with like day-to-day life. Like if you react to somebody cutting you off in traffic, if you react to every negative that life throws at you, instead of responding with like a calmness or a peace, like it's crazy what happens when you just change that perspective in your mind and you go from,
Yeah.
oh, like I'm not even gonna like, maybe the response is no response, right? And like that's kind of what you're saying within and like within that is like maybe my best thing to do is no response and just see what happens, and be patient with it. And like
Hmm.
I call it the art of
Patient.
yeah, patience. I call it the art of slowing down. Like that's like my title of
Yeah,
my
yeah,
journal, and trying to understand and bring awareness to those situations where like even to start this podcast, like I have excitement and I'm ready to roll. It's like I'm going. Like if I just slow
yeah.
down and like I slow down my speech, all of a sudden it improves. And this is literally an example right off cue is right here right now. Is instead of me running away with my excitement, now I'm sitting here in presence in conversation with you, and our conversations improved dramatically from the first point. So like
Absolutely.
I think there's a takeaway right there for anybody listening is challenge yourself to do that. Like when I write, like the first two words I write on a daily basis are slow down. And it's crazy, like just feeling myself slow down in the writing process. Not only do my letters get clearer, but all of a sudden my thoughts clear up, and there's clarity on the page and rhythm and flow. And now I'm connected, and what we talked about last night was being in balance, like, or being in alignment. Like when we're not in alignment, we're searching, we're looking for validation, we're trying to find something that is maybe not there. Well, when you're in alignment, you're within yourself and you're present with God, and then that takes over. So it's just that
100%.
it's
100%.
slowing down, and allowing the emotion to seize a moment for clarity to present itself.
Yeah. I
So
I don't think I could have learned a better lesson
I mean,
than
yeah.
the relationship. But um, with in terms of the journaling process of trauma journaling, let's say,
How about just journaling on a daily basis to understand your bring self-awareness instead of labeling it as trauma journaling?
yeah.
I think
Well, yeah, that's
we're
obviously
getting a little
extreme.
ahead of ourselves. Yeah, like let's just like daily journal or daily occurrences to understand and build awareness. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, no, no. I wasn't even. I was just kind of tie it back to before. I wasn't even talking about what we're talking about just now. But I agree. Like the art of journaling itself can alleviate all these things from happening because basically you just writing pen to paper makes it real, like we've spoke about. And
And
so when you kind of put it down, it's like you can kind of see things through a different light, and then you realize like, oh, I'm good now. I don't need to say this to somebody. And then obviously when time comes, but the just sitting there and journaling for however long you need, it takes away that emotional response of needing to like just to act on it.
And I'm gonna say, or I'm gonna keep going on this. Is one of my buddies met me uh, in indie ball this year, and we were roommates in the past, and we had a pretty good connection and bond, and we still do. And he's a creative person. His name Dakota, but he's super creative, super like he marches to the beat of his own drum, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just who he is, and it's something that I admire and I actually love about him. But we were sitting there having a similar conversation to like something like this, and he challenged me to write poems, and it improved my journaling because it added rhythm, it added rhyme, it added different things and aspects to just my day-to-day journal. So like if the journaling becomes repetitive or the journaling becomes like redundant or boring, there's definitely ways to improve or spice it up. I'll share what I wrote yesterday, and this was I was sitting at a hotel bar. I knew that if I laid in bed, I was gonna fall asleep. So I was like, okay, like I would like to. My goal is to see my boys, and like if I fall asleep, like that's gonna take me away from like why I'm here. So let me just I'll just read it to you. So this is a journal I wrote last night after getting off the plane. It was from one place to another, stopping along the way, falling asleep in one state, waking up in another, mind travel. Plane takes off, thoughts elevate. Now instead of looking up, peering down to the clouds. From one state to another, drifting from cloud to cloud, dream chasing, changing perspective. Walking slowly, letting my mind watch the wave. The hustle of hurry, draining energy away. Flow and slow, bringing on peace and pace. My pace controlled by my mind, the beat of my own drum. The slower you read this, the more thoughts that will come. When you hurry, you miss the when you hurry, you miss the I can't say this word, intricacy of my mind. Opening up the complexities of the mind takes time. Thanks. But I honestly I loved it. It was one of my poems I wrote in a long like first one I wrote in a long time that I was like, man, like when I was sitting there writing, it took me time, and like I have words crossed out, and I sat down and edited it, and that's one thing I haven't done in the past. Is I normally take my first draft and roll with it, but I wrote it, and then I would add, and then I wrote, and then I would edit, and then I was like, man, like that actually like came together, and I was like, that was fun, like it was, and I don't like time, and that's something we can dive in. Or not, I don't like time. I don't like the definition of time. I don't know how much time passed, but it led me into my next moment, whatever that was. Like whether that was, you know, a phone call with a friend or whether that was going to meet my people for dinner. So it was just like there's that dead time where I was like, okay, do I sit in my room and sleep and not grow or not understand what happened today? Like, yeah, like I'm tired for sure. But it was like, okay, like let's go do something. It doesn't have to be like this cinematic experience, even though like that's honestly what I'm kind of used to, but that's kind of what happens when you do slow down is it almost creates a movie. And I've had people tell me that it's like when I tell my story, they're like, man, that feels like a movie. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I would love to write a book about myself. And that's like, I mean, I hope one day I have enough experiences to fill up a lot of pages. So we'll see what happens. But I don't know. I just thought it'd be fun to share that.
Yeah, you've read poems in the past. It's interesting to see kind of how your mind just goes and flows. It's like you can just kind of put it all together. I remember you told me way back when to start doing it. I haven't started writing poems, but it's interesting to read or to hear yours.
But it's different like when I have other people read them and then I read them out loud. You know, because like obviously the way I read or the way I write is hopefully unique to me. But and I love my last thought even when I tripped up over it. Like the slower you read this, the more thoughts that will come. When you hurry, you miss the I can't even say it.
Intricacies.
Intricacy When you hurry, you miss the intricacy of my mind. Opening up the complexities of the mind takes time.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good one.
it doesn't seem that it rhymes, but it has rhythm. Like when I read it like that, even though I mess up that
Hmm.
intricacy word every time.
Do you write in stanzas?
I mean, can I show it like this? Yeah, I would say. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
and like the top part is like part of my journal, and like it was. I started to write about my day, and I was like, how do I like? What would be the best way to express myself? And I was like, let's try another poem. Like let's because it takes time. Like I'm not just writing line. Like it was like 4 lines at a time, and I stop and maybe I have a conversation with the bartender, or maybe I have a conversation with a guy on my side, or I go shoot pool, and then I come back and I'm like, dude, there's a thought right there. So like a lot of times, like previously, I would stop my poem at 4 to 6 lines, and like I don't know, this one's approximately 15 to 20. I don't know, but I mean, there's probably still more to add. I mean, and sometimes little is better, but I just thought that I don't know, it was fun for me. And it's challenging. It's challenging to rhyme. It's challenging to create rhythm. But when those two things come together and like you read it yourself and you're like, wow, that was cool. And I don't know. I would challenge journalers that are bored or don't want to do it or have a creative mind to do it. Give it a try. Whatever's on your mind. Like I would ask people for words. Like I used to sit at this coffee shop in York and I'd be like, throw me a word. Like and honestly, the story that I remember is that she called out violet, and I couldn't think of anything that rhymed with violet, and so I went with violent, and I wrote this, and I wrote this poem on violence, and I was like, I've never really been violent, but like it was interesting to see what came of it, like where my
Like more
mind would go.
spontaneous.
Yeah, it was exactly.
Yeah. How did you find that it helped? Did it help your thinking at all?
Well, in a way, I would say, like writing a poem is slower than writing a journal. But then, like when I
Yeah.
was like, honestly, there was like a 2 month period where I didn't write journal. I wrote poems, and so like my pages were like mixed bags. And then I went back to journaling, and all of a sudden I had rhyme and even like more flow while journaling. Like I would naturally have rhythm and rhyme within the journal post writing poems for 2 months. So like I would say I
Yeah.
don't know if that's better, but it to me it was creative is how I would describe it.
Interesting. You said it wasn't just you. You said a bunch of you guys are doing it around the team, right?
Well, yeah, and then yeah, exactly. So then I'm like, I'm sharing them with the guys on the bus. I'm like, hey, what do you guys think of this? Or like, what are your thoughts? Like, because it was halfway through the year. It was deep in the year, so I had some previous relationships that were already like there, and so like yeah, guys like Welk came in and posted a photo or a poem on the in the locker room, and it was funny, it was good, it had a message, and like like it brought it to the clubhouse, and that was kind of what I was saying is like we had the culture that like you could do that, like, and there's places that you
Hmm.
can't do that. I've been in them, and that freedom to express allows for conversations to progress. Literally, right there. Look at that rhyme right there.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that's our goal, right? Is to progress with an upward aim and be in balance or be in alignment towards that aim. Like I think we experience. I don't want to speak for you, but I experience frustration or sadness or doubt whenever I'm not aligned. Like when my left hand's chasing a rabbit and my right hand wants to work out. So if I align the two, then I'm doing a push-up, right? And then I'm challenging myself in growth and things that are
Hmm.
hard per se.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
But I do like there are times where I'll like not journal for 2 or 3 days, and it's like I don't want to say it's boredom. I get to that point where I was like, I don't know what I want to write, and it's like start with that. Literally write that sentence down. I don't know what to write, and then you can like create a rhyme. Is it out of spite? And then like you can just go from there, and then your mind will take you to the next place, or your journaling will take you to your next place, and then you'll be like, okay, like I'll stop there.
Mhm.
But I would say, and I'm sure there's other ways, and like that's kind of like that. What would is there a scientific name for that Huberman trauma journaling thing, or is it just called trauma journaling?
No, it's just called trauma journaling, really. Like they didn't really they didn't study anything. It's just the group that did it, and like they just kind of it's more of a journaling technique. Like they call it trauma journaling, but it's really just it's a technique of journaling. With regard to the trauma journaling, a little information on just the science of it, I guess. I think it's important for like people just understand exactly what it is. We can say trauma journal all we want, but with regard to exactly what it does, that's what made me interested. So for people like-minded people out there, you're not just going to act on something, just do it. You want to learn exactly why, and that's what Andrew Huberman did for me. So aside from also putting the link into the show notes, um, his podcast is about an hour and a half where he goes into it, give you a little brief synopsis of it. Basically, what the act of writing, what it does is there's obviously different aspects to your brain. The prefrontal cortex, specifically the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, one of its purposes is basically reflecting, like saying the truth. Basically, that's one of its uh, functions, recalling the truth. And a lot of things go on, but long story short, when you're in a traumatic event and things are going on, your body's basically in a fight or flight state, and your prefrontal cortex isn't activated when you're in fight or flight. You're kind of just reacting. Your prefrontal cortex is activated more so when you're in a cerebral state to where you're really coherent and you're present and you know you're really aware of what's going on versus the fight or flight state where you're kind of just reacting. So I'm sure you can understand where I'm getting at, where the idea of writing activates the prefrontal cortex to the point where you can basically create a coherent story as to what happened. Because obviously you're there, you can recall the experience, but it's almost like the subcortical structures are like cortical level is the top of your brain, and then subcortical obviously is underneath. Thalamus, hypothalamus, all these different things underneath. When they recall, obviously, they have almost a jumbled up understanding of what happened. And by doing so, or by that being the case, you kind of have this jumbled up assumption as to what happened, which basically adds to the anxiety of it, adds to the traumatic aspect of it, adds to all these different emotions you have based to it because you can't really create an accurate depiction of what happened, even though you were there, even though you experienced it, because you're in that fight or flight state. You don't really fully comprehend. You don't fully remember to the extent of an experience that you learned, chopped up, learned, and moved on from it. So basically, one thing that they mentioned in this study or in the podcast is this study that was done by the proceedings of the what is it? The proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, where basically what they did was they got a group of people and they basically played a game. The game being they rolled die. Now they got just random people. They didn't have background information. These people, like who they were, what they did, it doesn't matter anything. They just got random people came in, told them the game rules. Roll a die. There's a number that's going to pop up obviously on the die when you roll it. That's your number. A number is going to pop on the screen. If your die, if the number on your die and the number on the screen match up, you get $10. If it doesn't, you don't get anything. The sole only way that you can get your money is if you obviously tell them your score or what your number is. No one's fact checking you. No one's checking if you're correct. No, nothing. It just goes off your word. So you can lie every single time and get $10, $10, $10, $10, or you can tell the truth. Now, the caveat to this is that they knew the ratio should have been 50%. That at no given time should more than 50% of the people in this study have gotten the number correctly. So, first trial they did was, like I just said, they did this and they found that 68% of the time people matched their number with the number on the screen. And so, of course, it's 18% higher than what the truth would have been. Now, the whole point of the study was they basically did a non invasive brain activation. And what they do is they got this coil and activated the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So they basically put it above the brain and they activated this to a certain stimulus. And what they found was the second trial, when they activated this part of the prefrontal cortex, the ratio of people's uh, winnings was 50%. So by activating this part of your brain, they found that it went from untruth, it made untruthful people truthful. And 50% was the number that it should have been every time. That was the probability. And so afterwards, it being a 50%, but people reporting 50% of the time showed that the truth was being told 100% of the time. And the finding to this study was basically the hypothesis that they came up with basically after the fact of trying to figure out exactly what was going on was that by activating the prefrontal cortex, people become truthful and people can basically tell the truth. And relating this back to the trauma journaling itself, when, like I said, you're going through these experiences, you're not really understanding what's going on. You're kind of just in that fight or flight reaction. When you slow down and you write down exactly this traumatic event, what you're doing is you're basically solidifying this event into your mind. And by the act of writing, you're activating your prefrontal cortex. That's what, like, it's a direct correlation. When you start writing, that part of your brain is activated, obviously, as well as a lot of other places, but that place specifically as well. And by the part of the study or part of the journaling technique is you either do, there's two options. There's either you do the technique 4 days in a row, where you sit down and you write down for 15, 30 minutes, straightforward, continuously, no stops, nothing, um, 4 days in a row, or you can do it once a week for 4 weeks. And they found that people that did it for every other day, like for 4 days straight, um, the findings were a little better, I believe. But Andrew Hewering, he can go into all that much, much better. But what this does is basically it creates a coherent story into your mind of what this event is, and it allows you to basically reorder it into your mind. And when you recall it, the traumatic event of it is almost like the unknown. It takes that away. And for me personally, when I was doing this, when my first one, when I did my first, I did the four back to back to back, back to back to back to back, and basically my first one was very like just I was getting ideas down. Like it was just I was getting my thoughts down, getting what happened. Like it was very like jumbled around, like similar to kind of how it was in my mind. And as the days went on, by the fourth day, what I found was it was more of a story. There was a storyline to it, start, finish, transitions. It was a lot more smooth, create like it was just story like. And I found that yes, it was easier to write about the fourth day rather than the first, but by writing each day, I actually found that there was more I was able to recall and more I was able to make sense of. And I was able to not only learn from it, but I was able to move forward from it with the basically the true reason as to why things happened the way they did. And I was able to make I guess you can say assumptions, but I learned them to be true, that why they happened, why this specific event, why it was so traumatic to me. Well, exactly why, what was going on? Oh, well, it wasn't this event that was the problem. It was problems prior that led to the event that then created that event to be, that when everything blew up, let's say. It's I didn't address things properly, and then when you let things build and build and build, you almost get to a point where do you go? It's going to fall eventually. If you have a stack of papers and you can let them stack all you want, but it's going to fall eventually. And what I learned was don't let the paper stack. Address it head on. And that's a small lesson I've learned from this. But basically, for anyone that's interested in doing this, it's very traumatic. Of course, you're recalling this event. It's tough, but what are you going to do for yourself is you're going to allow yourself to have a little more clarity as to this experience that you're going to write about, and you're going to give yourself an opportunity to at least make sense of it and have a little more clarity to it, and in hopes that the recollection of it going forward isn't so much of a jumbled mess, more so an ordered experience that you can understand a little bit better. And by understanding it, hopefully it takes away from a lot of the stress and anxiety response to it. So, like I said, we're going to link Energy Human's podcast to the show notes. Highly recommend you give it a listen. He's incredible. We've listened to him a bunch. He's incredible. So, with
And also with our first advertisement of our podcast, if you guys like hot sauce, we got a sweet and spicy. It's actually amazing. A former colleague, a former coach created it. It's called Wild Pitch Hot Sauce. So I'll post that link to where you can get that, but it's simply delicious. So it was during that time when we were doing that, I wrote the story that like deeply impacted me and kind of
mhm.
a major like it. A lot of things were happening. It was like in college, like College World Series. Like I was in love with life, and like I think we talk about the law of attraction a little bit too within us. But it was kind of that. Like I was magnetic in a sense, almost, and my only goal there was to have fun. And then so like when 4 years, it's probably longer than that. 2018 to what was last year? It's 5 years. 5 years go by, and I still have like I had those strong emotions towards those moments. Like it's not. It's almost like I couldn't forget. And Matthew McConaughey wrote. He goes, "I don't write to remember. I write to forget." So like that's
Yeah,
kind of what it was. Like it
yeah,
allowed me to continue to move forward because I think I chased that feeling. Like it was like the 4th of July in my mind. Like I will never forget that day that I met that woman. It was next level stuff. Like it was a surreal experience that I was watching from somebody else's point of view.
well, that's the whole point of the whole technique itself is to basically create a more coherent story in your mind by just the act of writing itself.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to come to terms with something that you don't understand why it didn't continue,
Yeah,
right? So like
yeah,
if you're standing on the edge of the cliff and you're looking down, you don't really have words. Like when I was in Arizona, I was looking over the Grand Canyon and I don't know if I had words for what I was looking at. Like the depth of the Grand Canyon is like I still don't have words. So like in life, when you're left on the edge of a cliff, like it's very hard. It was like traumatic, in a sense,
yeah.
you know.
Well, the only thing you have is to recall the series of events that led to that moment. And if, in my opinion, of course, if you're doing it properly, you're looking within first. The
Well,
worst that you could do is look at everything else as to why, they messed up to allow it to happen to you. I mean, like you're the victim, let's say, but um, I feel like the true way of going forward is to see where you went wrong. I'm not putting words into your mouth about your experience, but just
that's
in
what
general.
happened. No,
That's
that's what happened.
Yeah, it's like it allows you to look at it through the lens if you allow yourself to see why you messed up. And the only thing that can do for you is just give you the best opportunity not to do it again. I mean, if that's the only lesson you learn, it's like, well, what better lesson could you possibly ask for? Someone could come to you, like even the person that messed up, it's like, oh, I messed up. Okay, cool. Why does that matter? Why does it matter for them to admit to you that they messed up? It still happened. It doesn't change anything. How can you alleviate from happening in your life again. And until you look within first, you're not gonna truly find that, figure that
Yeah,
out.
or maintain it. I guess like the thing is like I would, if I could do that moment over again or go back to that moment and just watch again, like I don't know if I would do anything differently. I just think I would, months later or weeks later, I would do it differently. Like kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's just like I would try to step away from the emotion and then see what happened, you know, later. Because I was hell bent on doing it. I was hell bent on going to get it. Like there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting it. And like that
I do
was what.
think this we should probably.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying in the future, I think this should definitely be a topic that we get into a little deeper. I think there's a lot of benefits in this
Talking
whole
about it.
experience. I mean, I can speak for myself, and I mean, not like obviously to break it down like event by event, but just so people understand really the significance of what this is. We can say trauma journal all you want, but until you really realize what it's doing to you and what it does, and of course how it affects you, but um, I wouldn't have been as inclined to do it if I hadn't actually learned about everything that had to do with it. And then I was like, well, let me give this a shot. And I'm very grateful that I did.
Well, I mean, I,
But
I mean, yeah, you're right. Like the more detail we can give and the emotion that we can get. I mean, mine was literally the 4th of July. We went to that concert on the 4th of July in 2023, and I don't know about you, but I had it. It was pure euphoria. Not only was the concert great, the fireworks were amazing. Like the presence was surreal. Like that is before that day. That is exactly how I described that feeling of like when I was like with her, and it wasn't just the first time. Like it was multiple times, and like that's what I was saying is like that thing was created over and over and over again for I don't even less than a year, but it was I don't remember any negative except going to the cliff.
so the trauma was that just losing it?
Yeah, the trauma was the cliff. Like the trauma was the separation and the disappearance.
Yeah.
So then I was like left clueless because I was like not only was I evaluating myself, like I was trying to evaluate her, and like I didn't have the accountability that I have now, and there were definitely things I did wrong, and that's what I learned through the trauma journaling is like I was never stepping away from the emotion, I was living in the emotion. But then I like when I moved away from me and I put it onto her, then I would get into this depressive episode where I would just like I would feel deeply depressed and sad and angry and frustrated and mad and I would do things that just were not in alignment with the person that I am,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Well, everyone's been there, sadly.
I don't know about every I hope not, but
Sadly.
like it just kind of is what I mean
Well, I can't
it's
speak
in
for
its
your
head.
exact experience, but just doing what you said, acting not in alignment of who
Oh
you
yeah,
are.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's called maturity.
yeah. I mean, I hope that situation for me doesn't arise again, but I don't know. I don't know what God has in store for me. I hope that I make better decisions and grow from my previous mistakes.
You only got each moment to
You know, make
to
God and myself proud, right? Right, Luca?
exactly, exactly. That's all we got. You do that consistently over and over again, and you'll find yourself in situations that say at least that you can trust that needed to happen. I feel like the reason it's traumatic is because you constantly are trying to figure out like its purpose. Like why did it happen? Like if you can just trust that it needed to happen, then the idea of it being traumatic isn't really a question. It's more of like why did this need to happen, and you learn from it. If it's traumatic, it means you're holding on to it. It's like if you learn from it already, if it's something that needed to happen, you don't really hold on to it. You just let it be because you trust.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, but I definitely, like I said, I would like to get into that. Like, just let's say even like the scientific background to it a little deeper on another podcast, just to kind of give people an understanding. And of course, I'm never going to do a good enough job when compared to like Huberman. So I mean, we can always link his
Yeah, yeah.
podcast to in the description to
Well, and
actually
then
get a you
like
guys will be able
that,
to get a 10
I
times
we could
better
we could talk about
insight.
that the post response too. Is like once you like let go and like the growth that comes from it. Like I think, and that's what my buddy alluded to is like that day that I met that cliff is like I had the worst day. Like I'll tell you, like on the bus I had no energy. On the bus I was focused on selfish taking. And I'll never forget my coach comes up to me. He's like, "You ready to go today?" And like internally, the answer was no. But externally, I'm in professional baseball. I can't like I was like I can't let the team down. But I let the team down by not being honest. Like I should have been like, no, like honestly, I'm not ready to go today. And then I get put in the game in a 3-2 ball game, and I give up 7 runs on like 8 or 9 doubles in a row in the matter of a split second. One, because I was not present, and two, like I was holding on to negative emotion. So how was I expected the result to follow anything but that? So I would say like the adaptation or the growth from that we should talk about too, and we like I think that would be a great interlude into that, and like a great interlude into our next
100%.
episode of like higher thinking. And I would really like to get your opinion on like this thought that Joel Missoula had. He's the coach for the Celtics. I was watching the Bucks Celtics game the other day, and Doris Burke was talking about Missoula, and he said that, or she said that his philosophy is that he wants his guys to continue to think at a simple but high level. And I'm not quoting this exactly, rather than being blank and like having the blankness of thought and just playing. And like I can relate to that heavy through my playing career, and I think it's an interesting topic because I think a lot of people get stuck in that flow state and what flow state is and what flow state isn't. And I think your perspective on it would be great. And honestly, like the conversations I've had yesterday and today within that, like I would like to share that as well. So
I love that.
I guess
100%.
we should wrap this up, and thank you guys for coming out for episode 3. I've had a lot of fun. I think Luke has had a lot of fun. He's got a smile on his face right now. So please continue to help us. We're just getting going. We're budding podcasters. So we're going to continue to put out our content. We're going to continue to do this. So help us by sharing with friends, posting comments, giving feedback, asking questions. We would love to you guys get involved, and we'll answer questions. Or if you guys have good topics that you want to discuss, like please bring them to us. And with that, again, thank you. I am gracious for this opportunity, and we will see you next week, Monday.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your time.